Hey guys, welcome to Ryan's Running Reviews. Today's a special episode because we have our first Under Armour shoe for the channel. It's the Flow Velociti Wind 2. Let's run with it. And before we get started, I do want to say these shoes were provided to me by Under Armour. However, they didn't have a chance to preview this video, and this final synopsis is my own. I would also like to say please leave a like on the video and consider subscribing so I can continue to make these reviews. Here we go. The Under Armour Flow Velociti Wind 2, yes, that's the full name, is a lightweight tempo daily trainer focused on those faster paces while providing a really consistent feel throughout the midsole. It's basically pretty much the same shoe as last year with a couple minor tweaks to the upper. This shoe costs $160, and we actually lose a little bit of weight compared to the previous version. It went from 8.5 ounces down to 8.35 ounces. So a very small change, but it did go down weight just slightly. As far as the stack height and drop go, unchanged from the previous version. You get 26 in the heel, 18 in the forefoot for a total drop of 8 millimeters. Again, same as last year. Starting off with the midsole, let's talk about that flow foam. The midsole geometry, foam compound setup, outsole is completely unchanged from the previous version. All the changes, again, took place in the upper. The Flow midsole is all one piece. I know it looks like two separate entities kind of glued together just because you have the color change, but it is all one single piece of foam, which helps keep the shoe really light. Now, when it comes to the overall feel of that Flow midsole, it's definitely on the firmer end, definitely more responsive. I feel like a lot of shoes nowadays are coming out with soft, bouncy, squishy foams, and those are nice, very comfortable, very fun to run in. But if you're someone who wants a lot of ground contact or a lot of ground feel and wants to pick up the pace, I think this works well. Again, it is a firmer, probably more dense midsole is kind of the way to put it. When you have it on foot or just in hand, it just feels dense and solid while being very light. Now, this helped me at least when I was running faster to kind of be able to pick up the pace. You don't get lost in the squish of a softer midsole because again, this is firmer, and it really helped kind of shield me from the impact protection. So while it is a dense, firm midsole, I thought it did really well at preventing or just providing a really nice, well-cushioned experience and being more focused, I would say, on shock absorption. So it didn't feel like when I was like hitting the ground that a shock would kind of run up through my leg. It didn't feel like an absolute brick. It felt well cushioned, but definitely, again, on the more firm, dense side of things. And the other thing I'll say is that the flexibility and just the movement of the shoe with your foot, I thought was really natural, had a nice kind of flow to it. The flow of the flow was really nice. So it is, again, very flexible, moves with your foot, and that was something I really appreciated while running in this shoe. And moving to the back of the midsole, you do get a rather large heel area that is kind of curved from side to side. So it's not the most stable experience. So if you're a heel striker, you do get a little bit of extra roll just from side to side because again, it kind of curves up, which I thought was interesting. It's not a huge thing, but it's just not the most stable heel ever. Another kind of interesting thing I thought was kind of cool was you do get a swallowtail heel or kind of a split point heel where it's kind of split into two different points. I didn't notice it while running. I didn't think it made a difference either way. I just thought it was kind of interesting that they did split the heel into two kind of separate points. So to summarize the overall kind of feeling of the midsole, it's definitely a firmer, more responsive ride. You definitely get a lot of ground feel out of this shoe. However, it doesn't feel like a complete dud. You definitely feel like you get a nice level of impact protection, and it feels really nice on foot. It allows you to pick up the pace without getting lost in kind of the midsole itself. And as far as the flexibility goes, very flexible. It goes with your foot, kind of feels like a more traditional running shoe. And then the heel area, again, just isn't the most stable because it has a slight rock side to side. And then moving on to the outsole, this is a big defining feature of the shoe essentially because there is no rubber. It's a rubberless outsole. And the cool thing is this midsole was actually kind of stolen by Steph Curry because he liked it so much. So when they were developing the Flow Velociti Wind 1, I think last year or the year before that, Steph Curry saw this in the whole production cycle and was like, hey, I want this foam and outsole on my running, or not my running shoe, my basketball shoe. So I think it was on the Curry 8, they moved up production, rearranged things, and included this outsole because it is so grippy and Steph liked it so much. So how does that tie into performance running? Well, I was actually really surprised by the grip for it being a rubberless outsole. Typically, if you get like foam outsoles, they don't have the best grip across some surfaces and you get a little bit of sliding. And that really wasn't the case here. I thought this gripped the ground extremely well. And the whole reason for it is because this compound, this foam, this outsole is developed in conjunction with Dow Chemicals, or Dow, I believe it's another basically material science company. So they have a lot of science and research that went into this outsole, which is why it's so grippy and why Steph liked it on his basketball basketball shoes. Now it's not perfect. I think for like some wet surfaces or like wet grass, it wasn't that great just because the surface is so smooth. They may be able to kind of change it up, maybe if they made like deeper lugs. But like for running on asphalt, concrete, or various other just like regular surfaces, I thought it did a great job at gripping the ground. Again, wet surfaces or other surfaces, not so much just because the pattern is relatively smooth. I'd be curious to see if they made the lugs larger. But overall, when gripping just regular running like asphalt, road, concrete, all that good stuff, I thought it did extremely well for having no rubber, which again allows you to have a really light shoe without having to sacrifice traction overall. Now, when it comes to the upper, this is the Under Armour Wrap upper. Essentially, it's a really thin layer of mesh that's kind of spiderweb by all this heavy stitching, which gives the upper its structure. I thought it did an excellent job of keeping my foot in place and is very secure. However, your foot actually doesn't interact with the upper you see here. There's another layer of thin mesh on the inside of the shoe. And while the upper is very secure, kept my foot in place, I thought it did a great job in that department. I will say it is rather snug, and you should probably go up probably half a size. Now, I typically wear like a size 12.5 or 13. This is a size 13, and usually with a size 13, I'll have like a thumb's length on top of my toe, and here my toe is pretty much at the top. So if you want a little bit more room, I would definitely suggest going up half a size because it is a little bit more on the snug side. The upper also has this really thin stitching that kind of covers the entire shoe, and this is actually reflective. So if you run at night, the shoe should be very reflective because again, the stitching incorporated into the shoe is a reflective material, which I think is a nice touch. So these should light up like a Christmas tree at night. Now, when it comes to the changes in the upper, they're very minimal. Essentially, the toe box or the toe guard region has a lower amount of stitching, so they kind of pared it back a little bit. And then the logo is now a plastic overlay, and then they did the same thing on the medial side for the wrap logo or branding. So a few branding shifts on the upper itself, nothing too crazy, but it's relatively the same. And I think they did add the reflective stitching to the upper as well, which I don't think was on the last version. And moving on to the tongue, they did update this as well. It is a gusseted tongue, so it wraps your foot as part of that, I guess, liner construction within the shoe. And it's a two-part tongue, which I thought was really interesting. Basically, the bottom half of the tongue is a really breathable mesh, and the top part has a little bit more substance to it, a little bit more padding. And I believe they added a little bit more padding to the top of the tongue with a different fit. Now, when it comes to what I thought about it, I thought it worked well. It didn't have any issues either way. It wasn't something to kind of write home about and didn't disappoint me either. Essentially, the whole upper just worked. It was, once you wear it for a while, it just kind of disappears, which I thought was a good thing. Kept my foot contained. The same can be kind of said for the tongue and overall lacing system. Didn't have any issues, and I thought they did a great job. It wasn't like super plush and comfortable. It wasn't super minimal. It worked well, and it's just, you kind of forgot about it, which is kind of something I guess you want in a running shoe. Just you want it to work with your foot and kind of forget it's there. Moving to the back of the shoe, you get quite a bit of cushioning for a lightweight shoe in the ankle and Achilles area. Worked really well for me. Very comfortable, didn't have an issue. And then on the back of the internal heel counter, which is rather flexible, it's pretty easy to move around. I would give it about a medium level of rigidity and support. Didn't have any heel lift. I thought the lockdown was good, but it's not a super strict internal heel counter. You also do get some reflective material on the back of the heel counter as well. So this shoe should basically light up very well at night. Now, a big component to this shoe and a lot of other Under Armour shoes in general is something called MapMyRun, which is essentially a Bluetooth device that's built into the right shoe and right shoe only. It's only in one shoe that allows you to get real-time data as you run. Now, basically, this Bluetooth device in the right shoe will pair with your phone and the Under Armour app on your phone, which allows you to see your cadence, mileage, and a whole host of figures and data. And it also allows you to get like real-time running coaching. So they have a whole kind of ecosystem and IT infrastructure built into the Under Armour shoe with a whole software experience as well. So I think that's really interesting. If you really want to use it, I think that's awesome. People who like the data analytics side or trying to improve some form or just want to understand how they're running, you have that option with the Under Armour shoe, which isn't available on most other running shoe brands. So it's kind of a cool option to see here. Another cool thing I like too is to see exactly how many miles you have on each shoe. So you can basically track when your shoes are kind of nearing end of life instead of having to kind of manually do it either via Strava or a journal or whatever it is. It's kind of nice that it pairs it directly into the shoe. So it's just kind of easy, don't have to think about it, and that technology is built in as well. So just another separate component that most other running shoes don't have. Basically, Bluetooth technology that's built directly into the shoe, tracks a whole host of data, gives you a ton of stats, and gives you live coaching as well, all through a whole app and all of that whole setup. So just an interesting fact and a big part of the Under Armour running story. And as a fun side note, there's also an SE version of this shoe. Basically, it's just a knit upper. It's elastic, very comfortable one-piece knit, which just gives you a different feel and a different look to the shoe. So there's a couple different options if you want to take a look at the SE as well. Just has a knit option, which I've worn for a little bit. It's definitely a little more elastic, not as, I guess, well contained as the regular version, but is very comfortable and I think looks really cool as well. So those are all the basic facts about the shoe. Let's talk about what worked well for the shoe and what didn't work so well. My first big positive was that the shoe lived up to what it was designed for. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the shoe was designed for those faster daily training runs, and I really felt that the shoe was able to perform at that level. So you get a really firm midsole, a really lightweight package, and that allows you to pick up the pace. Again, I didn't feel like I was getting lost in the midsole. It's definitely a firmer, more responsive ride with more ground feel, but that it helps you on those faster races, and I really appreciated the level of impact protection and shock absorption that the midsole provided. Now, the other positive I'll say is that the shoe is very comfortable, especially with the upper. I don't think the updates they made were that drastic either way. It really does feel very comfortable based on before and after. It's not a massive change. Just a couple of tweaks again to the tongue, the toe guard area, and some of the branding and things like that. But overall, really secure lockdown. I'm happy with the amount of padding they put in the ankle and Achilles area, especially when you get to these lightweight, fast shoes. The padding is kind of one of the first things to go. So I'm happy to see they kept the padding, very good lockdown, and just good overall fit that you just kind of forget about when you're running. Of course, this shoe wasn't perfect, and there are a couple things that I think could probably be improved. The first negative is it comes in at $160, which is definitely towards the higher end of things, especially for a lightweight speed daily trainer. And I realize it comes with the Bluetooth technology that integrates with MapMyRun, but not every person's gonna kind of buy into that system. So just something to keep in mind. And if you really do want to get this shoe, I think the previous version works just as well because it is basically the same shoe minus a couple of upper updates. And the other negative is it comes in at 8.35 ounces, which is definitely light, but within the speed daily training category, there are a couple lighter options out there. And the last negative for me was the kind of shape of the heel area, or just it wasn't the most stable heel ever. So basically it has a little bit of side-to-side motion, and that flow foam is super grippy sometimes. So you can kind of catch your foot and it just rolls a little bit on occasion, but I realize that might not be an issue for everyone depending on your running style and gait. But I did notice a little bit of side-to-side motion just because of how the heel was constructed and just some of the curves and geometry there. Again, it wasn't like super unstable, it was just kind of enough where I'm like, hey, this is just something to notice. So where does that leave us? Well, the Flow Velociti Wind 1 from last year got a lot of good reviews. A lot of people said it was probably Under Armour's best running shoe. And the Flow Velociti Wind 2, the shoe we're taking a look at today, is pretty much the same with a couple updates to the upper and some small tweaks. So it's relatively the same, has the same kind of fit, feel, and ride. Last year's version seemed to work well, and I think this year's version pretty much kind of keeps that up and works well. If it's not broke, why fix it? The shoe works really well for people who want a firm, responsive, tempo daily trainer for those faster workouts. You get quite a bit of ground feel. It's a very comfortable shoe overall, and you do get that Bluetooth MapMyRun technology built into the shoe itself. However, in the tempo daily training category, there are some other options that are a little bit lighter. The heel does have a little bit of a strange geometry to it, which makes it a little bit unstable. And if you're someone who wants a more plush, more well-cushioned experience, I would probably go in a different direction. And if you're here in Maryland, Under Armour told me to tell you guys that if you want to stop by the brand house, basically it's kind of their specialty store locations because they're based in Baltimore. They have a store in Baltimore, Columbia, and Annapolis. They have a whole wide variety of all their products and gear. If you want to test it out, see if it works well for you, just make sure you get on foot before you buy it. You can definitely do that. Well, I'm Ryan from Ryan's Running Reviews. Hope you guys have a great day, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks.